Good time of day, guys! My name is Godzi, and welcome to Higurashi When They Cry, Ch.4 Himatsubushi. I don't know what to say. So, I guess I'll just do what I've done for the last couple chapters and just give disclaimers beforehand. First disclaimer, if you're new here, I'm going to explain how much I actually know about Higurashi and the greater When They Cry series as a whole. As far as the Higurashi visual novel goes, I've only completed through chapter 3, obviously, because that's how much I've done on my channel. I've never read the visual novel before otherwise, so as far as the visual novel itself goes, this is a blind Let's Play. That being said, I have watched the original Dean anime from 2006, as well as Kai in 2007, and also Ray and Outbreak and etc, etc, etc. Basically all the Higurashi anime out there I've seen, including Go, the new anime. I've watched as much of that as has come out, which is 13 episodes so far. So, greater plot points in Higurashi that exist, like the truth of what's happening overall, I guess, I know what those are. So, like, I know the culprit, the twists, the turns, etc, etc, etc. Yada, yada, yada. Umineko, I watched the anime from 2009 back a couple years ago, and then played the entire visual novel on my channel. As for Kikonia, I don't know much about Kikonia. I've read, like, the first 7 chapters or such, and I also did the demo. Both of those are on my channel, so yeah. Otherwise, that's all I really know about When They Cry. So, yeah, I'm no veteran, necessarily, but I know a decent amount, regarding Higurashi, at least. But I have indeed forgot a lot of what happened, so, like, my experience so far with the visual novel, Onigafuchi was mostly just me being like, yeah, I know everything that happens in this chapter, because I was very familiar with Onigafuchi beforehand. As for Watanagashi and Higurashi, I remembered very minute things about them, so for the most part, it was relatively surprising as I went through, but as I got further along, the pieces started falling into place more so. More so with Higurashi as opposed to Watanagashi, because Watanagashi, I was blindsided a lot throughout Watanagashi, just being like, oh yeah, that happens, okay, forgot about that entirely. But Higurashi, as I went through, I was just like, oh yeah, that does happen, doesn't it? Like, the whole great disaster at the end. I forgot that was in Higurashi, more or less. I thought that was exclusive to, Yakusamashi. I keep on forgetting what that's called. The anime original arc between Sumi Horoboshi and Minagoroshi. But yeah, as far as what I remember from Himatsubushi in general, nothing. Literally nothing. I do not remember the first thing about Himatsubushi. That's probably because in the original anime, it was 2 entire episodes. Just 2. Whereas the other arcs were at least 4. So, yeah. Probably fair that I forgot a lot from this one, especially since I was told in the comments, Himatsubushi is, well, it exists. It gives some character insight, some political intrigue, sets some stuff up. It has a really good ending. It's holy shit, I can't wait for Mayakashi, etc, etc. So this is, like, kind of the middle child of Higurashi, I would guess. To compare it to other games, maybe, like Danganronpa. It's, like, the third case, but the difference is, I don't hear people trashing Himatsubushi. So it's more or less, like, from what I'm gathering, it's the low point just out of consequence. Because it's like, from what I'm gathering, not much happens in Himatsubushi. It's just kind of there. So, yeah, I'm excited to at least see what happens that I forgot about. But I'm not expecting it to be necessarily as great as the past 3 chapters have been. So, yeah. Even though I have also heard some people say that Watanagashi is kind of a low point, also just out of circumstance, because Mayakashi exists, which I completely understand that. Whereas Himatsubushi doesn't really have an answer arc equivalent. Like, I guess Matsuri Bayashi's kind of supposed to be, but Matsuri Bayashi's also the grand finale of the series, so it's like, how are you supposed to stand up to that when you're more or less the watered-down version of that? Even though I don't think there's that... I wouldn't imagine there's that much death or tragedy that happens in this chapter, but I don't really remember anything that happens in it, other than I can assume it's got a lot to do with Rika, because she's kind of the poster character for it on Steam, like the icon in the banner and crap like that. It's Rika, so makes sense. Just like how Satoko was in Tatari Garoshi, Mion in Watanagashi, and Rena in Onigafuchi, even though I would honestly say she'd be better for Sumi Horoboshi, and Keiichi should be Onigafuchi, but he also did not have... he still doesn't have sprites. I don't know if he'll get sprites here, but I don't remember if this chapter was from his perspective. I would assume Keiichi's gotta have sprites starting at least in Meakashi, but he could here, because I don't really remember anything about this chapter, let alone whether or not it's even in Keiichi's perspective, so yeah. Otherwise, another disclaimer I have is that if you're new here, I give characters my own voices, so say goodbye to that, and I also need to turn this down a bit, so that it's not too loud. It might be a little too quiet, though, in the volume mixer, so I'm going to turn that up to, like, 18. Tatari Garoshi was a bit too loud overall, I think, so I decided, yeah, I should turn this down a little bit, because, like, Onigafuchi, for the most part, was too quiet. Watanagashi, I think, was probably perfect, audio-wise. Then Tatari Garoshi was probably too loud. But if you guys preferred how loud Tatari Garoshi was, then I can set the settings back to that. But for the time being, I'm going to stick with this audio level. If it's too low, I'll turn it up next episode. If it's too loud, I'll turn it down next episode, etc. But first things first, before we actually jump into it, since a new episode of Go came out ever since I finished Tatari Garoshi, it's time to discuss it, and there's some stuff to discuss, so we might be here a while. Which brings me to my next thing. If you're new here, I do this thing called Spoiler Time, where I'm going to say, oh, I'm going into spoilers for either the original anime or the new anime. Then I pull up the menu, which in this case will be the config, and that's when you mute if you don't want spoilers until I pull down the menu. So, yeah, we're going into spoilers for Go, so go away if you don't want spoilers. Great pun, me. Alright, so, I'd like to say I was kind of right in that, yeah, Oishi's going to somehow incite this shit, but did he? I think this is probably, out of the 3 Go arcs, the most up for interpretation one based on how you want to trust other characters. Because it's like, from what we saw as viewers, Keiichi goes to Satoko's house where he gets beamed by Teppei, and then he beans Teppei back, kills him, gets sent to the hospital where Kumagai visits him, and then, like, months later, Rena tells him that Satoko, Rika, Mion, and Shion died. They got killed at the festival, presumably by Oishi. She said, like, he started unloading on the crowd, and those 4 died. But she didn't specify Oishi killed them, but I think that's kind of semantics, honestly. From what we can tell, Rena's saying Oishi killed those 4, and probably a bunch of other people in Hinamizawa. So, yeah, that's what we see, at least. Do I believe all of that? No, of course I fucking don't. I think Teppei was a hallucination. Case in point, that's way too much fucking blood. Like, also the red filter over everything. I originally thought that when Keiichi got hit in the back of the head with a baseball bat, that it was actually going to be Satoshi there, but no, it was Teppei, so I don't know. I think that was a hallucination, either from Keiichi's perspective or Satoko's. I don't think Teppei was actually there. So, yeah, about the blood, though. The reason why I'm saying the amount of blood implies that it's a hallucination, it's far too over the top. Teppei hits Keiichi in the back of the head once, and it's a fountain. That's not how that works at all. like, if we look at all the bloody scenes that happened in the previous 2 arcs in the new anime, which is really just Onidamashi, there was a lot of blood, yes. But I would argue there was probably more in that fight scene, in Tatari Damashi. Which makes no sense considering the weapon used there was a baseball bat as opposed to a knife. Like, it makes sense that there would be that much blood in Onidamashi since it was a knife, but that was also probably a hallucination anyways. So I think Tatari Damashi just had an even bigger hallucination, you know? I would assume it's gotta be a hallucination from Keiichi's perspective. Does that mean he's affected by Hinamizawa syndrome? Maybe. That or something else. I would venture to guess it might be something else. Because from what we have all been discussing over all this time, ever since Onidamashi, Satoko's probably in the time loop. So, does that mean Satoko did something to him, then went to the festival and died? Maybe. I think that's probably the most likely scenario. It's probably more likely that what Satoko did to Keiichi causes violent hallucinations and then makes him pass out. Because he probably went into a fit of rage, started like, maybe he hit his head against the table a bit or something, I don't know, ended up going to the hospital for his injuries. But then the question is, who found him? He was in Satoko's house. If Teppei's not around and Satoko's dead, how was he found? Quite a question, isn't it? Maybe someone heard a ruckus and decided to check. That would make enough sense. But, yeah. As for Oishi at the festival, there's 2 possibilities with that one. Because we really only have 2 guesses based on what's been presented to us. Either Rena's telling the truth, or she was also hallucinating, and that's how she remembers it. Which means either Oishi had Hinamizawa syndrome or something similar, and shot a bunch of people at the festival. Alternatively, Rena has Hinamizawa syndrome or something similar, and remembers things differently, so that means the truth of what potentially happened could be anything. I feel like it's probably impossible to theorize exactly what happened, though. I feel like, similar to Tatari Goroshi, in order to know exactly what happens, you kinda need information from the later chapters. Because it's like, the only reason why I kind of presumably know what happened, what exactly happened in Tatari Goroshi, like the gassing, for example, everyone in Hinamizawa getting gassed and dying, I already know that the reason why that happened is because Takano killed Rika, which for some reason makes it so everyone in Hinamizawa will die from this gas. I don't remember the exact specifics, but I remember generally speaking that's why it happens. So there could be something in Tatari Damashi that functions similarly. Like, we need to know information from the later arcs that are going to happen in order to know what happened in Tatari Damashi. Hell, they might take the Meakashi approach and just straight up tells us what happens, even though when you go through Watanagashi, if you take it at face value, what happens is Mion kills Kimiyoshi, Satoko, Rika, Oreo, and Shion, and then dies. And then somehow their bodies swap. Like, that's all. But then Meakashi explains exactly what happens, even though it was either Mion killed everybody or Shion killed everybody and then killed the other and then died. And then, yeah, which it honestly, after going through Watanagashi, makes more sense that Shion did it as opposed to Mion, but that's besides the point. My point is more so that it's possible that a later arc will show us exactly what happened in Tatari Damashi anyways. So it might not be worth it to speculate, but I still think at this point, Satoko is in the time loop. I don't think there's anything that was shown that could somehow disprove that, unless you claim Satoko's I have seen this theory, that Satoko was the one who hallucinated the fight between Teppei and Keiichi, ran off to the festival, and got killed by Oishi. But I think that's too convenient. I think it's much more likely that if Satoko's in the time loop, she did something to Keiichi, brought him to her house, went to the festival, and either got shot by Oishi or killed Mion, Shion, and Rika, then killed herself. Maybe she also killed Oishi and a bunch of other people. Maybe Satoko went there with an AK-47 and started blasting fools, and somehow made Rena hallucinate it so that it was Oishi. As for what the purpose of that would be, not a clue. Hell, it could even be influence from Hanyu or Featherin. We don't know. Could be influence from Rika. It could just be Hinamizawa syndrome. Maybe it's something different Takano did. I feel like there's way too many things in the air for us to know exactly what happened. So, my personal guess then, Keiichi hallucinated his fight with Teppei. Someone, probably a neighbor, heard the ruckus, went into the house and saw Keiichi, probably knocked out. They brought him to the hospital. Months go by. Rena goes to the hospital, tells him what happened. And as for what actually happened, I think it's much more likely that Rena hallucinated Oishi killing everybody. But it doesn't have to be the case. I don't have a theory for what exactly happened there. I just think it's up in the air. But I would assume Keiichi hallucinating the fight with Teppei rather than Satoko hallucinating the fight with Teppei. So then, that's what I think happened for the most part. Obviously, I'm a lot more confused about this arc than I was with Watadamashi, but maybe by discussing it, I can think of something else. Maybe there's a clue that I overlooked that could explain what happened, and we don't need information from later arcs. But I think it would make sense given the relationship that the Go arcs have to the original arcs, with how Onidamashi with Rena and Keiichi, Watadamashi with the switch between Mion and Shion, the truth lies somewhere in which sister was doing what, and Tatari Garoshi versus Tatari Damashi. It's all very confusing and gets explained later, more or less. Maybe not directly, but at least you can potentially figure out what happens by cross-referencing information you find out later with what happened in Tatari Garoshi. So, yeah. So, what do I think will happen in the next arc, Neko Damashi? I don't have a fucking clue, because I would assume it's not just a Damashi version of Neko Garoshi, which was that OVA episode where, like, the girls dressed up in random outfits and then they went to an abandoned factory or something. I don't remember, like, jack shit from that. All I frickin' remember is they did a club game, Keiichi won, I think, and then he forced all the girls to wear random outfits. Then they paraded through Hinamizawa and they ended up at some random building on a riverbank, and shit happened. I don't think anyone even died in it. It was more or less just expositional stuff, it seemed. So, yeah. I think more likely, rather than a Damashi version of that, we're going to see Burn Castle. I think we're finally going to start seeing more of the supernatural side to shit rather than the alternative Higurashi arcs, you know? But yeah, that's about all I have to say about Go. So yeah. Don't really have anything else to say. So we're going to end spoiler time. I have one more thing to say, but it's not spoilers. So welcome back, guys. Before we get into the actual chapter, which I know this is a very, 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 very long intro. I've had longer, though, so be prepared. We'll probably have longer, especially as Go continues, but yeah. I was told to look up something called Higurashi Daybreak, because they cannot describe it with words. So let's just go to Google, take a look at this shit. Google Images, Higurashi Daybreak. The fuck is this? Wikipedia. Higurashi Daybreak Portable? What is this? What am I looking at? I see a picture of Rika holding a gardening hoe? Is this a Higurashi arena fighter? I can't tell what this is. It's like all the characters are chibi. Yeah, it is. I see... I just see a picture of fucking Keiichi whacking Satoko with what looks like a shovel. Yeah, this is a Higurashi arena fighter. What the fuck? Why did I never know this existed? This was a thing? Okay, well, that's something. Mion uses a gun? Wow. No, this isn't canon. She never uses a gun. Who's... Oh, it's the fucking green-haired girl from the, opening that I don't know. Okay. Who's apparently from the console arcs. There's no names on screen, though. Wait, is that... Is Rika fighting a dude with a hat? Wait a minute. This cover art, it has Irie with a giant syringe. Oishi's got a rocket launcher? What's going on here? This is... very weird. I got nothing. I don't have a clue. Oh wait, is this like the... fucking select... Wait, is it an arena fighter or something? No, it's gotta be an arena fighter. This looks like the roster. I see Rena, Keiichi, Rika, Satoko, Mion, Shion, Takano, Tomatake, Oishi. I don't know who that is. Irie, Chie, Kasai, and Akane. Okay. I don't know who this random dude between Oishi and Irie is. Doesn't look like Kumagai. I don't know why it would be Kumagai anyways. Alright, well, that's something. Let's start. Alrighty. Himatsubushi. For you, the final mystery. That's a Kukonia parallel. Interesting. Time-killing chapter. I now entrust you with all the mysteries hidden within Higurashi When They Cry. However comical it may be, if you have reached any conjecture, then you have passed. This final novel is a meager reward for you. Conjecture is impossible. You have the right to reject this story. Oh. Alright. This arc includes choices that were added in the console version. Oh, what? These choices result in dialogue changes and can lead to bad ends? Do you want to see these choices? I'm gonna make a save here. I'm going to start with saying no? But is there any purpose to these? Because if there is, I'll go back and see them, but maybe they're not worthwhile because I would assume this... Well, no, it just says this wasn't in the original. Skip additional choices, show only content from PC version. Prompt additional choices from console version. Prompt choices and highlight correct answers. You know what? We'll do that so I can have more save points before each of these. I'm fine with that. Who is the criminal, you ask? Don't we search for them in the story? Who is the criminal, you ask? Do you even know what the criminal did? Who's the criminal? Who is the criminal who will kill me now? Frederica Berncastle. Midsummer 1985. Oh, 1985. So 2 years after actual Higurashi. Oh, text box opacity. Yo, 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 yo. Where are ya at? Boink. There we go. Alright. I had misread the time and ended up arriving too early. The schedule board flipped with a series of clacks. My flight to Sapporo was still a bit later on. Yeah, this probably isn't Keiichi's perspective, so then who the fuck are we? I still had over an hour before boarding. Well, I might as well close my eyes for a bit on that bench over there then. I came here directly from work, so maybe the fatigue from that was making me sleepy. Finding a suitable bench, I put my luggage on the seat next to me and settled down. Akasaka? Who the heck is this? Is this a guy or a girl? Wait, I could probably figure this out easily if I just do that. Do this. Dude, got it. Phew. I sighed like an old man. I had hoped to stay young forever, but I'd become splendidly middle-aged, where some random dude then got it. Apparently the rumor that even people in the latter half of their 20s experience a decline in their physical strength wasn't a lie. It had been mind-numbingly busy at work lately, so I rarely had any time to myself. This might have been the first time I'd been able to enjoy a journey alone like this since I was a student. The reason behind this trip was to meet with an old friend. It was a bit strange to call him an old friend. In fact, it might be better to call him a bad one. Okay. After retiring a couple of years ago, he moved to Sapporo, his mother's hometown. His mother passed away soon after, and he was now peacefully enjoying his second lease on life. Would this be Oishi then? His name was, Kurado Oishi. He was a former detective from the primary investigation unit at the station in Okinomiya, XX Prefecture. To be honest, the only direct contact we ever had didn't last more than 3 days. After that, we exchanged New Year's cards, but never met again. So this would be the first time meeting him in 7 years. Oh, 7 years. So that would be... Fuck, I can't do math. 1978. Okay. In other words, we met 7 years ago, in 1978. Wow, game just keeps on telling me shit that I try to figure out on my own. There was something I just had to ask, to talk to him about concerning that time. To explain that, it was impossible not to recall the incident that happened back then. That kidnapping. The details and resolution of which were resigned to darkness. Oh, wait! Oh, so this is going to happen 5 years before the events of any of the other arcs. So this is probably constant information, right? This is something that happens, technically speaking, in every arc, I would assume. Also, it was impossible not to recall a certain mysterious girl. Okay. My name is Mamoru Akasaka. It was a year that had been strangely hot, even though it was only June. Okay. Early summer 1978. He says something about a mysterious girl, which I would have to assume would be Rika, because of her being advertised alongside this chapter, but... Alright, everyone. Goodbye, teacher! Okay, bye. Watch out for cars, and don't drop in at a friend's house along the way. Make sure you get your textbooks in order for tomorrow before you go to bed. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The lively sounds of children running towards the hallway. Okay. Young boy. Hey now, didn't I tell you before? I already have one of those! I don't need any more! The unique, high-pitched voice of youth. The energetic shrill of the cicadas went completely unheard by their ears. Children returning home from school split off one by one from their groups of friends as they went through intersections in the residential area. Even though there were several of them in a group as they left the school, as they got closer to their homes, the numbers dwindled. That's why the fewer friends you were walking home with acted as an indicator that you were that much closer to your destination. Later! See ya! Yeah, see you tomorrow! He finally parted ways with his last friend. A van was parked at a bend in the road. The window was open, the sound of the radio leaking outside. It must have been the news or something. For that reason, the 3 of them were arrested for traffic violations and obstruction of justice. Due to the protests against the Hinamizawa Dam project resulting in bloodshed when clashing with riot police last month, things have only become more violent. The police are therefore taking precautions against radical activists causing yet another incident. Last week, there was also a direct confrontation with Minister Inukai on the steps of the Ministry of Construction. Okay. The boy's ears perked up at the mention of the name Inukai. Who's that? At that moment, a man's face peeked out suddenly from the window of the van. His behavior was a little different than that of a man looking around to see if there was any incoming traffic before he opened the door of his vehicle. His eyes meeting suddenly with the unfamiliar man, the boy panicked slightly. Nightingale? What's going on? Is this the man then? Nightingale. Okay. Skylark? Okay, what? The dude from Fairly Odd Parents, Chip Skylark? They've secured the 2 blocks around us. We're good to go! The man in the passenger seat whispered quietly. Oh, quietly, sorry. Nodding in acknowledgement, the man opened the door and stood before the boy. Why do I have a Discord notification? Oh, okay. You. Are you Toshiki Inukai-kun? Oh, the boy's name is Inukai, okay. While asking that, the man peered at the boy's name tag. Toshiki Inukai. The name was written plainly there. Pick up the phone! Pick it up! The phone rang for a third time. If he reached out, he could easily pick up the receiver. However, he was concerned that if he picked it up before it had even finished ringing once, whoever was on the other end of the line would think him a fairly cheap person. That's why he normally never picked up the phone until the third ring. Even he thought it was a worthless habit. However, his thinking that there isn't much meaning in waiting for just 3 rings, wouldn't waiting for 5 be alright, was very much a reality. His mind filled with such trifling thoughts, he picked up the phone after the third ring had finished, its reverb dampened by his action. Yes. Hello? Hello? He knew that sometimes due to a malfunction at the switchboard, calls didn't connect well. At those times, it was best to hang up and let the person on the other end call again. Thinking that, the moment he began to hang up the phone, he sensed that he was definitely connected after all. He felt the presence of the person on the other end of the line, keeping silent. Hello? So who is this Inukai person? There was no way they didn't hear his question. What was the meaning of this? It wasn't like he didn't know that people could use silent calls to harass others. However, he'd never received a call like that until today. Maybe he was just lucky before, but he didn't believe that he would receive such a call on this phone. There were no direct calls to or from this line. Everything had to go through an operator. Therefore, there was absolutely no way the call would be connected unless it was verified there was somebody else on the other end of the line. That's why he didn't understand how to deal with this silent call and instead settled into confusion. I don't know who you are, but if you have nothing to say, I'm going to hang up. Please call again some other time. Intending that to be a parting line, he made to slam down the receiver. It was at that moment, the person on the other end spoke for the first time. Kidnapper. You didn't say who you were, so I was anxious. If you're not Minister Inukai, please hang up right away. He couldn't help but be surprised by the extremely strange voice on the other end of the line. So, kidnapper. I'm guessing these people kidnapped that kid, and that's his son, or something? Was there a human alive who could speak with this hoarse and metallic voice? No. This was a voice he had heard somewhere before. That was the kind of voice that was on those lowbrow documentaries that they'd use when they wanted to hide the identity of a speaker, wasn't it? Oh, okay. The voice he was hearing over the line was exactly like that. Who are you?
As I said, that's what I want to ask. Are you Minister Inukai?
He, Inukai, hesitated to answer. Unable to discern the intent of the suspicious phone call, he had a vague feeling that something was off. He thought about hanging up the phone and asking the operator who initiated the call. However, he forced himself to restrain that urge, and for the time being, chose to state his name and listen. That's right. This is Inukai. I said my name, now say yours.
My name doesn't matter. First of all, let's begin by thinking about the situation you're in right now. Right now, you're sitting in your chair talking on the phone, yes? Then, why don't you try opening the lower drawer to your right?
The lowest drawer to the right of the minister's chair. There was a lock on it, not enough to function as a safe, but nevertheless, it was a drawer that contained some valuable things. That's why Inukai thought that the person wanted some of the important information contained within that drawer. Sorry, but I don't have any intention of opening that. I have no reason to follow orders from somebody who won't even give me his name.
If you don't open that drawer, I'll hang up the phone. You'll most likely end up regretting that. Why don't you think about opening that drawer first?
Inukai didn't like following orders from the suspicious person one bit. However, he was concerned about what the man said about regretting it, so he decided to open the drawer. He took the small key he kept stowed in his wallet and unlocked the drawer. His hand stopped right before he opened it. What if there was a bomb inside, and it would explode if the drawer was opened? That delusion took hold of him. He quelled that instinct and opened it.
Did you do it? The thing that's in there. Do you know what it is?
This is... What is the meaning of this? Hey!
I don't think there's any need for me to explain, is there? I'll give you some time, so please think about it a little. I'll contact you again later. Now then, pardon me.
Hey! Wait! Hello? Hello? The call had already ended. That would not change no matter how much he yelled at it. Even still, Inukai, without realizing that, continued yelling into the receiver for a while. The drawer was still open. On top of the folders crammed into the drawer, it lay there. Toshiki Inukai. Written in plain lettering on a grade school's name tag. Just lying there. Enshrined there, completely out of place, as if it were cowering. Okay? This is a work of fiction. If your name in real life is Toshiki Inukai, please know that we're not trying to kidnap you. Alrighty. No, opening time. It's different this time, too. Bear. Bridge. Welcome to Hinamizawa, okay? Okay, hi Rika. Who's this man? Is that Akasaka, maybe? That dude guy? Oh, hi Satoshi. Hi Shion. Hello, Tomataka and Takano. I still don't fucking remember what happens in this chapter. Wait, excuse me? That's a parallel. Wait, no, that's not Keiichi, is it? Okay. It just looks like Keiichi. I'm guessing those are characters from the console art. Oh, that's a death. Cool. Okay. Who's that? Oh, okay. Okay, well, I think I know what that scene was, at least. Well, where the opening was probably a lot louder than I am. Unless I tried really hard. Whenever I do get to those console arcs, shit's gonna be fucking wild, isn't it? I'm guessing that random dude was probably Akasaka. Oh my god, another name I don't fucking know. Do you remember, Yukie? This picture. This is where I first proposed to you. That brief moment before you nodded back. You probably wouldn't know just how much. It seemed like an eternity to me. Yes, I would have never thought that amount of time could feel like an eternity. Compared to how long I had to wait for you to propose to me, it was... From the moment I met you until today. Compared to the time I've spent since I was born, it might only be a brief period, but they were definitely precious, beautiful days that deserve to be called an eternity. That time continues even now. From now on. I wonder if it'll be a boy, or maybe a girl. Either one is fine. Boy or girl. Either way, it's living proof that we love each other. If it's a boy, we'll name it after you. Mamoru. Wait. Isn't Mamoru Akasaka's name? No, wait. No, that's the family name, isn't it? Wait. Mamoru Akasaka. No, because they switched them around, so that's Akasaka's first name. If it's a girl, we'll put the Yuki from my name in hers. Wait. Is this... Wait, what the fuck? Are these things that she said to him? I'm guessing this Yukie person is, Akasaka's wife? Thinking about names is so fun that in the end, we still haven't decided yet. There's still time to puzzle over it. Not that long of a time, actually. You see, Yukie, there's something I have to apologize for today. It's about your job. Sorry. Looks like an annoying bit of work has come up. In the worst case, I might not be able to be there for the delivery. It's fine. You have a very important job. What you do protects the way we live. Compared to you, it's nothing. Please, go ahead. Is this supposed to be a conversation between the two? Because, at least put quotation marks. When you return, I'll be waiting here with our child. Thank you. Also, I'm sorry. Please don't apologize. If you feel guilty about it, then you can just, atone. If I atone that much, no matter how much money I have, it won't be enough. It's a joke. Now, go on. Okay. As I left the room, I bumped into an elderly man. It was Yukie's father. In other words, my father-in-law. Okay. Father. I didn't want to intrude, so I waited in the hall. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard. Go. Yukie is that kind of girl. No matter what happens, she doesn't want to hold you back. I've forced Yukie to give up on so many things. To put her through this during childbirth. Such an important time in her life. I'm ashamed. If you really feel that way, when you're done with your work, make some time for Yukie. She'll be happier with that than you passing your work off on someone else. Thank you. I know full well you do important work. Be proud in what you do. Yukie is looking forward to your triumphant return. Yes. Okay. I jumped into the taxi that was waiting outside. Compared to the time when I first got here, the numbers on the fare meter had grown considerably. It seemed the modest time Yukie and I had spent together wasn't so modest from an objective point of view. Sorry to keep you waiting. Go ahead. No worries. Well then, off we go. The taxi jerked as it changed gears to accelerate, soon burying the hospital my wife was in behind a throng of buildings. If it was to end up as a really troublesome ordeal, I probably wouldn't be returning for quite some time. To call a rookie like me, and on top of that, one who's off duty, it seemed that the section chief was waiting for all hands on deck, calling for all hands on deck. I'm guessing you're a cop then, and that's probably how you met Oishi? The veteran upper brass gathering on an emergency basis happened occasionally. This was the first time, though, that I experienced everybody gathering together like this. Whatever was happening, there was no doubt it was going to be something novel. Right when my wife was ready to give birth. If I wanted to spend the time to curse my misfortunes, I'd be here all day. Even the verdant ginkgo trees lining the street that always brightened my mood seemed to lack some of their usual luster. Eventually, the government office came into view. Briefly holding my breath, I let the feelings of tension course through my body once again. I had to remember the work I was doing was important, necessary, and difficult. I composed myself and sharpened my wit. Ready. The taxi stopped in front of the building. Kasumigaseki, Tokyo, Metropolitan Police Department, Public Safety Division. Yeah, you're a cop then. Kano? Chief, everyone's here. Akasaka-kun, could you close the blinds? The blinds were usually closed when they needed to use the projector, or if the discussion was going to contain some particularly disturbing content. The blinds closed with a satisfying sound, darkening the interior of the room. Immediately, the inside of the room was completely drained of the pleasant morning atmosphere, leaving behind only the cold illumination of the fluorescent lighting. After the supervisor ensured that everyone was present, he nodded to the section chief once again. With everybody on the edge of their seats, the chief stood up solemnly and began to give his report. Approximately 48 hours ago, the Minister of Construction's grandson, who is also the son of one of his staff leaders,
is believed to have been kidnapped.
Oh wait, that was an old man. Okay, that wasn't his father, that was his grandfather. Okay.
It is believed the minister, in an effort to resolve matters amicably, chose not to report the situation to the police, and plans to cede to the demands imposed upon him.
It seemed that approximately 48 hours earlier, the Minister of Construction's grandson, who was also the son of one of his senior staff members, was kidnapped. That's literally exactly what they just said. Thanks for the exposition, though. The reason why it was phrased that way was because the person in question didn't admit it had happened.
Based on the results of surveillance conducted on the minister's residence, multiple suspicious phone calls from what is believed to be outside the city took place. The abducted child is said to be under treatment for some illness, but there's no trace of any hospital records or witnesses to such effect. Due to that and various other reasons, we believe without a doubt that a kidnapping has occurred.
According to what he just said, a kidnapping has occurred. Here they omitted the details that brought this incident to light. If you think about it a bit, that meant that before this incident happened, the minister's residence had been under surveillance already. I won't use the word spied upon. Didn't he also say that? Yes! Like, why is this dude's narration so redundant? Of course, there wouldn't have been court approval for this, and it would have been very hard to explain to ordinary citizens. However, it was quite an effective method to catch wind of incidents like this before they got worse. I'd like for you to understand that dealing with these cases before they become a problem is the job of the Public Safety Division. Why is he just following their demands instead of reporting this to the police? The fact that a minister can't even trust the police. What is the world coming to?
It seems the group of perpetrators demonstrated that they have quite a high level of surveillance on the minister themselves when they conducted the kidnappings. Enough to give the minister pause before calling the police. We'll find out right away if you call the cops, more or less. So it's possible that there's a mole close to the minister.
Why is my chair creaky as fuck all of a sudden? Several of the higher-ranking members who seem to have experience with this kind of thing let out deep sighs.
The goals of the perpetrators, their demands, as well as this entire incident are as of yet unclear. But in any case, the possibility that this may grow to threaten national interest is extremely high.
If their goal was to simply have their demands met for monetary gain, that would have been nice. However, if this was some politically motivated shakeup, things would get a lot more complicated. Since we're not receiving any cooperation from the victim, that means that we're not privy to any of the details of the threats or demands.
Due to the fact we believe there may be a mole involved in this incident, this investigation is highly classified. Only the people in this room are to know of this. Furthermore, as this case is our utmost priority, we'll be placing a hold on everybody's normal duties. Understood?
After that, the supervisor continued on, tactfully explaining our course of action. Want me to narrate it for you? After he says it, he will say things and I will recap what he says immediately after he says it. If this incident were to become public, it was possible that the minister's political life would be over. I'll spare you the explanation of how the rest of the dominoes would fall, but in the end, support in the Diet would decline, followed by a no-confidence vote in a snap election. And it might even expand communist influences. Okay, wow. Forgot we're in the fucking Soviet Union days. Red Scare was apparently also in Japan. In other words, we wanted to handle this delicately.
Kawasaki and Saiki. Monitor communications from the minister and the child's residences 24/7. Find out what the minister is doing. Report anything that happens. The remaining members investigate whatever is related to the cases assigned to your units. Focus your line of investigations on the commies, Reds, and Confeds.
Christ. Jesus Christ, the political shit here. I mean, it makes sense given the time period, and it also makes more sense that Japan would be more afraid of communism than the United States would, considering their closeness to Russia. And also Korea at this point. I would assume the Korean War has already happened at this point, right? I'm actually gonna Google that real quick. Korean War. Yeah, that was in the 50s, so yeah. So that's already happened. Then the Vietnam War too. They're pretty close. And China too. So yeah, they're basically right next to like 4 communist countries. I think China was communist in the 80s, right? I would have to assume so. But at least this makes sense, you know, compared to the United States, who's just like, oh no, we're on the other end of the world! And we also have never gone to war with Russia, but we're afraid that they're going to take over our minds and make us all hate private property or something. Whereas, at least with Japan, they're like, yeah, we fought Russia in the past, so this is kind of terrifying, you know? So, I get that. It's just funny from the perspective of existing in 2020. Don't discount the possibility of foreign involvement either. Even though it's probably not communism realistically, this is probably gonna be people from Hinamizawa who did it, you know? I've experienced one or two unamicable situations before. This, however, was the first time I've seen things get so hectic. Several sophisticated conversations were progressing without the involvement of a rookie like me. I didn't intend to be timid, but I couldn't hide my confusion at this unfamiliar situation. And cover that. As for Akasaka-kun, I snapped back to alertness upon hearing my name called. Yes! Do you investigate the environmental groups that have petitioned the minister? Among them, there's that group protesting the Hinamizawa Dam project that made the papers. And make sure you investigate them thoroughly. I doubt this is the act of some citizen group, but we have to eliminate every possibility we can. Understood. So those opposed to the Hinamizawa Dam, it's probably best if you go to the location personally, get some information from the local authorities. They're a fairly radical organization, so the public safety division there should have them marked as well. Understood. I'll head over there. Your wife, she's almost ready to give birth, isn't she? I apologize for the timing of all this, but I'm counting on your cooperation. We can't take our time with this, so we just have to brute force it with our boots to the ground. Yeah, I know. My wife hates to interfere with my work with her own circumstances anyways. Sorry, and thanks. So then, as for Kawasaki-kun and Saiki-kun, to help support your... I didn't want to take a business trip when my wife was about to give birth. Even if I was a little busy, as long as I was in Tokyo, I could head to the hospital right away. On assignment, though, that'd be difficult. Even so, I knew the work I was doing was important and fully understood that I was in no position to be so selfish. I'd have to make it up to my wife for having to be away at such an important time. My wife, Yukie, would probably forgive me with a smile. The only thing she could hate doing would be holding me back. My male ego, though, at least wished she would have tried to stop me. Sorry, Yukie. I don't mind if you always complain to our child that their father couldn't come to the hospital when they were born because he was too busy with work. The next day, I took the bullet train to Nagoya, and from there transferred to the train to XX Prefecture. Getting to my destination by land took several hours. If I was traveling by air, in that amount of time I could probably get as far as Hong Kong. XX Prefecture was by no means close. I never sat in first class except for work, but whenever I did, the seats seemed stiff. Closing my eyes, I mentally reviewed the documents I read yesterday. The group under investigation, the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. They are a group of residents opposed to the development proposed under the Hinamizawa Dam project. The local protests were quite heated, and were getting more radicalized. Even limited to what was written in the newspapers, there was bloodshed that occurred during a clash with riot police, interference with the dam construction. Too many to count. The number of petitions, sit-ins, and direct appeals to the relevant organizations were innumerable. As an extension of that, there was a direct appeal to the Minister of Construction the other day. This was the reason why we were investigating this group in the first place. The land that they lived on was going to be submerged, so it was no wonder they would go into a frenzy over it. Even given that, though, could they really be capable of doing something like kidnapping the Minister of Construction's grandson in order to halt the project? For my take on it, I had serious doubts. This kidnapping plot was extremely sophisticated, and complicated enough that it was believed there was some political backing. This wasn't something that could be pulled off by some group of local protesters. Well, just like the chief said, the plan was to eliminate all possibilities. While I'm in the XX Police's reference room taking my time investigating, the higher-ups in Tokyo would probably solve the case. Without my involvement entirely. Even if that was true, I couldn't regret being away from Tokyo while my wife was ready to give birth. This was work. There was really nothing that I could do. Ding dong. The announcement that we would be arriving at our destination soon snapped me back to wakefulness. Gogura XX Prefecture, Prefectural Public Safety Division. Okay. We're in the Okinomiya police station, I guess. The Onigafuchi Defense Alliance? Yeah, they've been quite active around here. The Prefectural Public Safety Department already had the documents and a cup of tea ready and waiting for me. The short of it is, they're a group of residents opposed to the dam. Really, it's probably better to say that every resident living on the land that's going to be submerged is rising to action, though. Like the old saying, fight to the last, they're a determined and well-prepared lot. It'd be nice if they drew the line at just being a moderate residential organization. The stack of papers they had prepared for me in the document room was by no means thin. At first, they were pretty much your average citizen's initiative, but ever since that incident with the riot police, they've really started to heat up. Now they've got a violent mentality, on top of growing increasingly radical. Violent organizations usually indicate ones that enforce their own ideology without regards to the democratic process. Breaking that down, many of those organizations held extreme left revolutionary ideologies. Fair. Considering that, I couldn't help but be surprised that a citizens group would end up going this far. Radical citizens movements happen occasionally. It seemed, however, that this group was nothing as trifling as that. It seemed that I would have to reconsider exactly what this Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was. The Defense Alliance's demand, in other words, the withdrawal of the dam project. How far would they go to have that demand met? The kidnapping of the minister's grandson was classified. That meant, of course, I couldn't tell the XX Prefectural Department about it either. As you know, there were arrests after last week's confrontation with Minister Inukai, and there's enough reason to believe they could use illegal means to assert their demands. I skimmed over the list of the criminal records related to the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance recorded in the documents. The contents were all violent, not giving me the barest hint of a feeling that these people were trying to uphold the law. Could you give me a basic rundown of the types of illegal activities the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance are engaging in? The chief opened up a manila envelope, fished out several unorganized sheets, and spread them out on the desk. It seems that raids on the construction site are the most common. At first, they were committing relatively petty crimes like cutting power cords, jamming locks, and breaking office windows by throwing rocks. Of course, what really happened first were things like demonstrations, sit-ins, and distribution of pamphlets. Lively but democratic forms of protests. However, then the demonstrators and police clashed, which started a riot, leading to numerous injuries and arrests. It was from then on that the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance, like their name implies, began to take a more demonic form of resistance. If the raids were frequent, didn't the local police up their patrols? Well, of course they were on full alert, but they were up against locals, you know? There wasn't much the police could do if they were sneaking around under the cover of darkness. You might as well label the entire map of Hinamizawa village around the dam construction site enemy territory. No matter how alert the police were, the locals would just show them exactly how easy it was to sneak around. Actually, it was after the police upped security that the protesters started getting ever more extreme, so they were being provoked. See here, can you tell how things started to heat up? An office set on fire. The destruction of heavy construction equipment. Destruction? They couldn't have used explosives. No way. You see, they crammed the gas tanks full of sugar cubes. If they do that, it fouls the engines. Even in Japan, it seemed that there had been people doing that to the vehicles of occupying forces right after the war. Compared to misdemeanors like breaking windows, it was extremely violent and aggressive. After being toyed around with to that extent, the local police have completely lost face. Wait, wrong person. The arson was a bit much. After that, the local police drastically increased the number of personnel they had stationed there around the clock. The raids on the construction site quieted down a bit after that. He used the words quieted down, but that was still smack dab in the middle of the list of crimes. See, after they found that attacking the site had become difficult, they started resorting to personal attacks. The first people targeted were the construction workers. After that, there was silence. What was being described to me was a guerrilla war fought in the jungle. Threats and violence against the workers. Harsh words and harsher rocks were thrown. There's quite a list of accusations here, but there's not a whole lot of convictions. Of course not. First of all, there's no witnesses. On top of that, even if we identified the perpetrators, they have alibis coming out of the woodwork. What do you mean by that? Take, for example, you're walking around Hinamizawa. When a certain man stabs you with a knife, you remember the person clearly and even know his name and address. However, the knife doesn't have any fingerprints on it and there's no other physical evidence. Well, you'd think this would be a run-of-the-mill case of assault, wouldn't you? In Hinamizawa, though, it's a perfect crime. Everybody is. The entire village. They're all in on it. To protect the man who was the perpetrator, they'll get their story straight and prepare an alibi. To that end, they'll probably even forge some evidence. There's nothing they can do but put them on trial. On top of there not being any material evidence, though, people testify one after another to cover his side of the story. Any prosecutor would hesitate to file charges. Did I accidentally click twice? No. I'm not sure about murder, but if it's something like opening a gash on somebody's forehead with a thrown rock, or leaving a bruise after hitting someone, even if you could single out the suspect, there's enough not mystery. Why do I say wrong words constantly? There's enough reasonable doubt to not convict. Every case is without a doubt perpetrated by someone in Hinamizawa, but they can't identify who. Even if they could figure out who it is, they're unable to obtain enough circumstantial evidence through due process. The villagers were all extremely well informed about this, and so the malicious, vicious, and tenacious personal attacks continued. The victims can't have been okay with that, right? Couldn't they have filed for an appeal? Well, you see, about that. Everybody on the inquest committee didn't want to get involved with something so troublesome. They won't stick their noses into anything related to Hinamizawa. The inquest committee is comprised of a random selection of local residents. In the event the prosecutor fails to get a conviction, they have the power to order a retrial. It's a system designed to assert the will of the people on the actions of expert prosecutors in the legal world. In this case, however, being composed of local residents has backfired. They don't want to get involved? Why is that? How do I explain this? You could say they're afraid, since it's a little special there. Special? Is it an outcast community? No, it's a little different from that. Well, just think of it as them being afraid. It's a little hard to explain it just now. Oh, right, there's an easier way. Wiping his forehead with a handkerchief, he opened a file labeled as a list of members of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. The power of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance, you see, is the fact that they count many people among their members who are influential in neighboring areas. Could you take a look at this? I looked. What I saw startled me. Prefectural and municipal assembly members, staff members of the Chamber of Commerce, an executive of a business association, an executive of a town council association, and a PTA liaison. There were more than a few people with a lot to say, both locally and in the neighboring regions. Around here, you could pretty much expect your actions to be observed by those against the dam project. If you said something in its support, who knows how it would work out to your disadvantage. In any case, every town in this area is being held by the throat of somebody from Hinamizawa. The list of Inquisition Committee members is undisclosed, isn't it? There has to be some measures in place to make sure they'd avoid retribution, no? Well, it is undisclosed, so their privacy is assured, but the person in charge of that is from the Okinomiya Municipal Office. In other words, a local. While you might expect some professional confidentiality, you can't know how everybody is connected. The people from Hinamizawa have a lot of tight bonds in that regard. When you consider the obligations and duties people have to the region, the web of information thereby formed is nothing to scoff at. It's not uncommon for housewives in a neighborhood to know which kid from which house is what grade in which school, what subjects they're good at, and what vegetables they hate, among other things. You see, there's a Yakuza organization here with strong ties to Hinamizawa and the surrounding area. That's probably the Sonozakis, right? It would seem that they're providing full support in these recent incidents. They seem to be proving most effective. Gangsters? Signing together with the residents opposed to the construction of the dam? It's a little hard to see what their common interest is. It's not that difficult at all. You see, actually, one of the lieutenants in that gang is originally from Hinamizawa. He was adopted into a rather influential family in the village. Exactly what was this Hinamizawa? I had thought it was some desolate, rustic village. However, for some reason, they exerted a strong influence on the surrounding areas, and had a strong sense of unity. They would protect their village by any means necessary, even if that meant resorting to violence. The chief had said that they were afraid because there were numerous influential people living there, but somehow I got the feeling that they were afraid of the village itself. There was something clearly different from what I had read in the documents in Tokyo. This was no simple residential protest against a dam. For some reason, an uneasy feeling began to nestle itself at the back of my mind. I chose the most basic way to ask my question. In other words, I directly asked what I wanted to know. Chief, this is just a hypothetical situation, but... Huh? This Onigafuchi Defense Alliance, in order to halt the dam project, do you think they could, say, threaten somebody important to accomplish that? The chief replied immediately, it's possible. Truth be told, they've already gone to municipal and prefectural offices, as well as local offices of the Ministry of Construction, and done things that could be construed as intimidation. Several of the workers' families have also reported that they're being followed around by some suspicious people. Well, that would make sense. To halt progress on the dam, they raided the construction site, destroying heavy machinery and lighting the construction office on fire. If they didn't have any qualms about doing that, threats and violence against people related to the dam would probably be no problem. But that was it. Even your everyday hoodlum could use threats and violence. However, this time it was the kidnapping of the minister's grandson, an abnormally high-level crime. Not only was pulling off the kidnapping difficult in the first place, but so was maneuvering to have the minister surrender to their demands immediately. There was no way this was the work of amateurs. Did these people have the power to enact this large of a crime? That was the heart of the matter. Was the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance an organization capable of pulling this off? In order to ask that question, once again, I chose the most basic method. Again, hypothetically, do you think they could kidnap a relative of someone of political importance? There's no way they could pull off something that big. That was the answer I most hoped for. If it was that answer, my work was as good as halfway done. I might be able to get back in time for my wife to give birth. That was how it was supposed to be. The chief, without a hint of hesitation, replied, "They just might. There's no telling how far they'd go." Sorry, Yukie. Seemed like my work wouldn't end so simply after all.
Oh, Akasaka-kun. Good work. How's the information gathering at your assigned region?
This is the other chief, got it. It's coming along. Seems I'll be able to meet with their local public safety department, so I'm planning on heading out that way. How's the investigation in Tokyo going?
The others are progressing along, but the number of groups we have to investigate are countless. Time isn't really a luxury here.
There were no new developments at this time. No matter how suspicious the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance was, if they solved the case in Tokyo, my job was done. It looked like my wishful thinking wouldn't come to pass. Hanging up the phone, I let my gaze drift outside the window to the valley of unfamiliar buildings. Other chief now.
Akasaka-san. A car you can borrow just returned. I'll take you to it, so follow me.
Thank you. He showed me the elevator to the underground parking lot where a battered sedan was waiting for me. Pfft. That the steering wheel kept drifting to the left was a little concerning, but it would be enough to get me around for a while.
Motion blur.
My destination was Shishibone City, XX Prefecture. Oh, we weren't in Okinomiya, were we? An area under the control of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance. The Okinomiya police station was right on the front lines. Okay, now we're heading there. Okay, neat. I like the direction this chapter's going, but I can understand why I forgot about it. Alrighty. Okinomiya, XX Prefecture, Okinomiya Police Station. Okay. I realize that I'm not quite at an hour of actual content since I was, talking for like 20 minutes at the very beginning of this episode, but I didn't expect to talk for 20 minutes, I only expected to talk for 10. But that's besides the point. I'm out of time to record, so that's gonna be it for this episode, guys. I'm liking this chapter so far, so I'm excited to see how it continues. So yeah. But I can definitely tell why it just, exists. Regardless, that's gonna be it for this episode. If you liked it, then be sure to press the like button, and if you didn't like it, then fuck you too. Remember to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all my videos and stuff. And as always, my name is Godzi, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye!